Welcome to Impartial Points and our explainer on gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is one of the most controversial and least understood features of modern democracy. It's a process that allows politicians to manipulate the boundaries of electoral districts to serve their own interests, often undermining the very principles of representative government. At its core, gerrymandering is about power: who holds it, who keeps it, and who gets left out. It allows representatives to choose their voters instead of voters choosing their representatives. Understanding gerrymandering begins with understanding how electoral districts work. In the United States, legislative bodies, both federal and state, are divided into districts, each represented by a single elected official. These districts are redrawn every 10 years after the national census to account for changes in population. When redistricting occurs at times other than after the census, it's often a sign that a party intends on gerrymandering. Ideally, redistricting should ensure that each district has roughly equal population and fairly represents communities. But when the people in charge of redrawing the maps have partisan interests, the process can be manipulated to create an unfair advantage. That's where gerrymandering comes in. The term gerrymander dates back to 1812 and is a blend of two words, gerry and salamander. It was coined when Massachusetts Governor Elbridge Gerry signed a bill that redrew a state Senate district in a way that clearly favored his political allies. A political cartoonist at the time noticed that the oddly shaped district looked like a salamander, and thus the term gerrymander was born. More than 2 centuries later, the name stuck, and so did the practice. There are 2 main tactics used in gerrymandering: packing and cracking. Each is used to manipulate the voting power of particular groups, especially along political, racial, or demographic lines. Packing is the process of concentrating as many voters of one type into a single district as possible. This tactic ensures that these voters win overwhelmingly in that one district, but it also means their votes are wasted in neighboring districts where they might have made a difference. For example, if a city has a large population of one political party, mapmakers may pack all those voters into one district so that the other districts remain dominated by the opposing party. It's like putting all your opponents in one box so they can't influence the rest of the playing field. Cracking, on the other hand, dilutes a voting block's influence by spreading them across multiple districts. Instead of giving a group a strong voice in one area, it ensures that they remain a minority in many areas, effectively silencing their political impact. Imagine taking a community that leans heavily toward one party and dividing it up so each slice is overwhelmed by voters from the other side. The result? That community may not win any seats. Even if they have substantial numbers, they aren't representative, and it undermines the basis of American government. Gerrymandering by any party is an insult to all voters. These techniques are often used together to maximize partisan advantage. The goal isn't just to win seats, it's to make those wins nearly permanent, even in the face of shifting public opinion. In states where one party controls the redistricting process, it's not uncommon to see wildly distorted maps with serpentine-shaped districts that defy geography, logic, and community integrity. These odd shapes are a hallmark of gerrymandering. Gerrymandering can be used for partisan purposes, racial purposes, or both. Partisan gerrymandering is when district lines are drawn to favor one political party over another. In many cases, state legislatures controlled by Republicans or Democrats have been accused of manipulating maps to entrench their power. Racial gerrymandering, meanwhile, is when district lines are drawn in ways that dilute the voting strength of racial or ethnic minorities, often in violation of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. While racial gerrymandering is illegal, proving it in court is a long, difficult process, and the lines between racial and partisan motives are often blurred. The impact of gerrymandering is far-reaching. It creates safe seats where incumbents have virtually no competition, making them less accountable to voters. When a party gerrymanders, it hurts the voters of that party because they become establishment seats that don't have to be responsive to the will of the voters. It can reduce voter turnout as people feel their votes don't matter. It leads to more extreme candidates, as the primary election becomes the only real contest, encouraging politicians to cater their rhetoric to the ideological base instead of the center. And it often results in a legislature that does not reflect the political makeup of the population. In some states, one party can win a majority of the vote, but only a minority of the seats. One of the most alarming aspects of gerrymandering is how subtle and technical it has become. Advances in computer modeling and voter data analysis have turned gerrymandering into a data-driven science. Political operatives now use detailed demographic information, voting history, and even consumer behavior to draw lines that maximize their party's advantage with surgical precision. This practice, known as extreme gerrymandering, is difficult to detect and even harder to fix. Although the Supreme Court has ruled that racial gerrymandering is unconstitutional, it has declined to strike down partisan gerrymandering, saying it's a political issue outside the court's purview. In a 2019 decision known as Rucho versus Common Cause, the court held that while extreme partisan gerrymandering is incompatible with democratic principles, there is no constitutional basis for federal courts to intervene. This means the responsibility largely falls to state courts, state laws, and in some cases, voter-led initiatives. Some states have taken steps to fight back. Independent commissions have been created in places like California, Arizona, and Michigan. These nonpartisan bodies are tasked with drawing fair maps based on geographic and community considerations rather than partisan advantage. The results have generally been more competitive and representative districts. However, such reforms are not universal, and in many states, the party in power still controls the process. Public awareness and activism have also grown. A number of watchdogs advocate for fair redistricting and challenge unfair maps in court. In recent years, ballot initiatives have given voters in several states the power to take redistricting away from politicians and put it in the hands of citizens. These efforts reflect growing concern that gerrymandering threatens the integrity of elections. But gerrymandering is not just a political issue, it's a moral and civic one. It touches on fundamental questions of representation and fairness. When politicians choose their voters instead of voters choosing their politicians, the basic idea of democracy is turned upside down. It erodes public trust in the system and deepens polarization by creating districts that reward partisanship over consensus. Let's consider a hypothetical example. Suppose a state has 10 congressional districts and roughly equal numbers of voters from Party A and Party B. In a fair map, each party might be expected to win around 5 districts. But if Party A controls the maps and uses packing and cracking effectively, they could draw a map that allows them to win 7 or 8 of those districts, despite having only half the votes. That's not theoretical. It has happened in multiple states. The consequences of gerrymandering don't just affect national politics, they ripple all the way down to local issues. School board elections, city council representation, and funding decisions can all be influenced by how districts are drawn. When certain communities are perpetually underrepresented, their needs are ignored, and their voices are silenced. So what can be done? In addition to establishing independent commissions, some reformers advocate for using algorithms or AI to generate fair maps based on neutral criteria. Others suggest multi-member districts or ranked choice voting as ways to reduce the stakes of line drawing altogether. Transparency is another key factor requiring public input, and open map drawing sessions helps ensure accountability. Ultimately, fixing gerrymandering requires both legal reform and civic engagement. Check out our video on civic engagement. Voters need to understand how maps are drawn and demand fair representation. They need to support initiatives that promote transparency and oppose efforts to manipulate the system. Democracy, after all, is not just about casting a ballot, it's about ensuring that every ballot counts equally. In conclusion, gerrymandering is a complex but crucial issue. It lies at the intersection of data, politics, and democracy itself. Through tactics like packing and cracking, politicians can distort representation and entrench their power. While reforms are possible and happening in some states, much work remains. The path forward depends not only on laws and lawsuits, but on an informed public committed to fairness. Because if the maps are rigged, the game is rigged, and democracy loses. We hope you found this discussion informative and insightful. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the world of information at your fingertips. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share with others. Join us next time on Impartial Points.